Hi there, welcome to That Board Game Show. My name is James Wood.
And I'm Sonja Wood. I'm James's mother. And today we're going to be talking to you about a classic game which was actually designed 1 year after James was born. This game is very important to us, and we're going to tell you the story as to why. The game I'm talking about is CATAN. I'm sure lots of you who are listening to this probably know about this game. But for those that don't, Jamie, Jamie is the rules guy, so he can give you the quick overview of what CATAN is actually about.
Well, Catan was formerly known as the Settlers of Catan, which is how some of you may be familiar with it. In recent years, it's been rebranded to simply be Catan, because that's what everyone just called it anyway.
Well, we call it CATAN, and some people say CATAN, and some, well...
I believe the correct pronunciation is CATAN.
CATAN. Okay, well,
because it's German.
Okay, well, so we say
So that's
CATAN.
how I've heard the Germans say it, so I assume that's the correct way.
I would think. But
to each his own.
we are South African, and for whatever reason, we heard it as CATAN, and so CATAN it is to us. So apologies to anybody who thinks that that's the wrong way to say it. But anyway, let me tell you, I want to tell you the story about how we got into the next level of tabletop games. But before I do, I would like Jamie, because you're the rules guy, and you like to... Jamie's the rules guy and Mom is the storyteller. So over to you, Jamie, to give people an idea of what Settlers of Catan is about.
So in case you're not familiar with the Settlers of Catan, or Catan, in the game, the players are going to be building settlements, cities, and roads on the island of Catan, which is represented by a grid of hexagonal tiles, which you will put together in a random configuration at the beginning of each game. And those tiles have various different resource types on them. You have pastures, where you can acquire sheep. You have wheat fields, where you can acquire grain. There are forests, where you can acquire timber. There are mountains, where you can acquire ore. And there are clay pits, where you can acquire bricks. So on each of these tiles, you're going to be building your settlements in an intersection between several different tiles. And at the beginning of each turn, you're going to roll 2 dice. Each time you roll these 2 dice, they're going to give you a number ranging from 2 to 12. And on these tiles with the different resources, there are numbers from 2 to 12. And each time you roll the dice, you're going to get resources from the tiles adjacent to your settlements.
According to the dice roll.
According to the dice roll, yes.
Yeah.
And then you can use those resources to build the various buildings, settlements, cities, and roads. And you can also, a big part of the game is trading. So you might have a settlement on a location where you're getting piles and piles of bricks, but you're not getting any of the other resources just because of the way the dice are being rolled.
So you can build lots of roads, but there's not much else you can do. Don't they need bricks for roads?
You need bricks and lumber for roads.
Oh, right. So now you've got to go to the forest, hope that the die roll gives you forest resources.
If you have a settlement adjacent to timber. But if you don't, somebody else at the table more than likely does. So you can trade with that person. You can offer a trade to that person saying, I've got all these bricks. I don't know what to do with them, but I can see you've got piles of timber and you don't have any brick. So now, if we do a trade, you can take some brick, I can take some timber, and now we can both progress and move forward.
And we're building. So it's like building economics and building and...
Yeah, it's economics, it's trading, it's resource management.
You know what I think? I think whoever's listening to this should go watch the video.
Yeah.
Because it's so hard actually to try and visualize. It's such an amazing game. The other thing about Settlers of Catan is there's so many expansions. I think we've got all of them, haven't we? And I'm not ashamed.
Yes, I believe we have all of them.
And I'll tell you why.
There might be a couple fringe case ones that we don't have. But.
Okay, but we love it. I'm going to tell them the story because now I think they must go watch the video if they want to find out how to play the game.
Yeah, we've got a video giving a quick overview of Catan and its expansion Cities and Knights on our YouTube channel. So if you want to see the game over there, you can...
Go to That Board Game Show YouTube channel and they can watch the video. But here's my story that I wanted to share with you, because as a family, we all played board games we actually had board game nights. So Wednesday night was board game night and Friday night was board game night. But I'm sure you would agree that when you say to your children, we're going to play board games now, they're not going to say, oh, we don't want to play board games. Well, I don't know if they do that now in this current modern era. But then in those days when they were little, it was always a big highlight, the board game night. And so when we played board games on Friday night, it very often developed into playing more board games during the course of the weekend. But now that's another story. The reason why I'm just giving you a little bit of quick history was to say that we played board games with our children. And when I was a child, we played board games as a family as well. Now, I'm sure you would all identify with this. Those of you who are listening, the board games we used to play were Monopoly, lots and lots of different types of card games, until one day, our dear friend Simon arrived at our house and he said he's got something to show us. And he put down on the table Settlers of Catan. And we looked at this and we thought...
And down the rabbit hole we went.
Exactly. But we thought, what is that? He said, sit down, he's going to teach us how to play this game now. And so it's all Simon's fault that we went down the rabbit hole. But anyway, he taught us how to play Settlers of Catan. Well, you know what happened? We didn't leave the table for hours and hours and hours. Simon spent the weekend with us.
And Catan didn't leave the table for the entire weekend.
No, it stayed there the whole weekend. And of course, Simon was just so incredible because he had done all sorts of little extras with this game. Remember, he had added
He'd made all
things.
kinds of little custom tiles and bonus resources. And
he even had a little volcano somewhere or other. I don't know why. He just decided to have a volcano in that corner of the mountain somewhere. Anyway, it just made it very, very engaging. So, I mean, we can take something from that, that you can actually really enhance a game by adding your own little touches and things to it.
Oh, yeah, there's a whole sub-genre hobby within the hobby that is
exactly.
customizing and adding to games.
So what happened after Simon left, because he spent the weekend with us, is what did we do? We rushed off to the nearest store. And let me tell you, that's a feat in its own because we live quite far out in the country on a nature reserve and so on and so forth. So, the shop isn't around the corner. But anyway, we were hooked. That's all I can say is that we were hooked. So off we went to our nearest bookshop because that's the only place where we could find board games. And they had quite a big selection, actually. We were rather surprised and impressed at this big selection of board games. And we bought Settlers of Catan, didn't we? And we also
I think
bought
at the same time we picked up Seven Wonders.
Seven Wonders, yeah. And
that was
something
one of our
else.
earliest.
They had Rivals for Catan. Is that what it's
Oh,
called?
yeah.
What's it called?
It's Rivals for Catan, which is a two-player only card game version of Catan. So it allows you to get a similar experience to full-size Catan, but in a much more compact package.
But you know what we should mention? That it says on the box for Settlers of Catan that it's a 3 to
4 players.
3 to
is
4,
the
not 3 to
official.
5.
Nope.
Oops. Okay. But you know what?
There's only components for 4 players in the base box.
Okay. Well, Jamie and I played as a 2-player game. Most often it's
primarily,
just 2. Yeah. I would say that, of course, we love it so much that we like to introduce it to other people as Simon did for us. However, most of the time we played as a 2-player. So, and it absolutely works for us.
Yeah, we find it works perfectly fine. I can understand why it's recommended with more players because with 2 players, the map is a little bit too big in that you're not really getting in each other's way. So there's less room for the negotiation and the trading element.
So I like not getting in each other's way.
You tend to just have all the resources you need to do what you want to do.
Yeah. But anyway, you know what? We needed to share this. Well, we said, let's go and talk on a podcast and share with you the beginnings of our journey into the next realm of tabletop games. Because my childhood, it was Monopoly and the like. And then when our children were growing up, it was expanded a little bit beyond Monopoly.
Yeah, we played all sorts of games. We had Sorry, we had Clue or Cluedo, depending where you are in the world.
Herd Your Horses. You know what?
Herd Your Horses was another one.
And that little chicken one. Oh, we had this game that had little chicken standees with little magnets. That they stood in little magnets. These little cardboard standees, and the mummy chicken hen would go around looking for her little chicks, and the ones that attached to her magnet were her chicks, and the ones that were pushed away, were repelled, were not. And we had to go and collect our little chickens. I don't even know what that game was called, but I just know that it brought many hours of fun. So anyway, that's that game. Today it was to tell you the story about Catan, because that really was the entry, the gateway for us into
modern hobby board games.
Yeah, modern board games. And it's taken us in a whole new direction and really opened up many, many more opportunities for us to expand and enjoy this hobby that we never knew existed. Thanks, Simon. We're always teasing Simon that it's all your fault. Look how much money we've spent on board games. But we don't regret it.
Not at all, no.
We have got a few hundred. Are we? I'm not ashamed. People say,
if you count all the old classic ones, I'd say we're north of 300.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe we shouldn't say that. But anyway, the thing is, we don't regret it because we have had such value from these games. I mean, you can't even count or measure the value as far as I'm concerned. It's been worth every moment and every penny spent. So, and it all started with Catan. So we should say thank you to the people who designed
thank you
Catan.
to Klaus Teuber and his family who developed and designed Catan.
Yes, thank you, Klaus and family. Thank you for starting us out on a wonderful, wonderful family hobby. There's been many, many pleasurable moments at that table. I think I'm going to send this podcast to him, to Klaus and family, so they say thank you to them. We can also talk today about the very many expansions, because Catan didn't just stop there with the first one that Simon showed us. I've lost count.
I think the one Simon showed us, actually, he already had, I think, Cities and Knights and Seafarers. Those two expansions were already sort of plugged into his.
Yeah, because his board went on and on.
Yeah, it kind of sprawled across the entire table.
What is your favorite expansion?
Probably Explorers and Pirates.
Is that my
one? Which was the first expansion we got, which actually is one of the reasons it worked so well for us, is that was the first expansion that was designed specifically for 2 players.
Oh, right. Is that the one? You see, we've got so many different expansions. I've got to get it clear now. Is that the one where you go and you collect spices? And
so it's like a long sort of oval board, and you start on a small beginning island, and then there's a whole bunch of sea tiles, and you've got to sail out.
You venture out. Exploration. Love games like that where you go exploring. Yeah, that is definitely my favorite expansion of all the different Catans. But there are quite a number of different expansions, and we like all of them. So, we could go in depth on each expansion, but I don't think we need to do that. What we should rather do is make videos on them.
Maybe do that in a future podcast. You can let us know down in the comments if that's something you'd like to hear. A more in-depth discussion on the Catan expansions.
But for now, I think what I could do is just say that Catan holds a lot of meaning for me. It's a very important game to me because of the fact that it really broadened this hobby for us. It was like the start of broadening it. Because when we were playing tabletop games when you were younger, we had a certain selection. And every year I used to struggle to find another one to add to our collection. But then once we discovered Catan, thank you, Simon, there was absolutely no end to it. And there still is no end.
Yeah, it just keeps going. I mean,
it's incredible.
The stats are astonishing. I mean, literally thousands of new board games are released every year.
And when you were a child, I had to struggle just to find one new title. And now in this new modern, like you said, the modern collections now.
And without that first weekend playing Catan, there probably would be no That Board Game Show.
Yeah, that's true.
Because it's because of games like Catan that this YouTube channel and this podcast exists.
Exactly. It is just an endless, wonderful journey, I think, actually. And, we also have spoken in another podcast about one of our other favorite games, and that's The Seventh Continent. But, I should be careful to say one of our other favorite games because we've just got so many favorites. It's just the list is so long. As you said, we wouldn't have That Board Game Show. It would never have even happened. That was an idea you had. When was that?
2016.
2016.
We started That Board Game Show.
My goodness. You had this idea to start a channel for That Board Game Show videos. talking about all the different games. In fact, we had some people helping with the presenting of some of the videos then, at that time. And then the pandemic happened, and then everything. Everybody knows about that part of history and, on the timeline of life. But anyway, what happened with us in the pandemic actually is it just gave us more opportunity to sit and play board games and video board games, if you think about it. So, yeah.
Well, I started doing the solo playthrough, run-through how to play videos for the channel during the pandemic. If it hadn't been for that lockdown and that isolation, that might never have happened.
I know why. Do you know why? Well, the people who are listening won't know why, but I know why. Because you didn't particularly want to be the presenter for that board game. You quite liked
quite enjoyed being behind the scenes.
Yes, behind the scenes, behind the camera most specifically. Yeah, you weren't keen to be there as the presenter, but it's going well because think about it. Routinely now you're putting out, creating and making videos for that board game show. So it's wonderful. It never ends, the pleasures of this wonderful hobby. And here we are now sitting doing a podcast, chatting about it. It's wonderful.
And we hope you're enjoying listening to us chat about it.
Yes, we do hope.
And if you are, please consider giving us a review and all those good things on wherever you happen to be listening to this podcast.
Yes, please do. But you know what I'm going to go and do now, though? I'm going to go put the kettle on because it's tea time. And I'm finished chatting to the people today about Catan. It was very important that I told the people about how this game got us kick-started into the next realm of tabletop board game playing. So I'm now going to tootle off and go and put the kettle on, and I'm going to leave you to wrap up this podcast. But I want to say thank you to the listeners. Thank you, listeners, for listening to our story. And there will be more. There's lots of stories still to come. Thanks for listening.
And I'll say thank you so much for listening to That Board Game Show. To find more, you can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you appreciate what we are doing here, please consider joining our Patreon community, where you can see behind-the-scenes content. Please join us in the next episode. I hope you enjoyed the show. Bye.